You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that reveals facts, truth, research, and statistics and never messes around. With your hosts, Taylor Phillips, Ed Smith, Frank Vashner, and Buck Geno. We lay down the entire truth about everything regarding your Detroit and Michigan sports teams, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no coddling, no pop culture, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313. Follow Frank Vashner at Frank_Vashner, VAJCNER. And follow Buck Geno on Twitter at BuckGeno3. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group with the same name. The hosts of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast do not take any suggestions or criticism from any member of its audience on how it should be run. It is up to the host to decide what they want to cover. They also do not intend to be any amount of popular in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Additionally, the views of the audience, right or wrong, do not reflect the actual truth revealed on this program.
And welcome to episode 287 of the Week in Review on Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio, the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. Taylor Phillips and Buck Geno again. Got a lot to cover, but let's stick with our. Let's go to our top story here.
That one is long gone.
The Tigers have officially hired former Minnesota Twins manager and previously Arizona Diamondbacks bench coach Ron Gardenhire. And
are you kidding me with this?
You are pathetic.
That doesn't look good because we say that Ron Gardenhire's anti-math. They signed him to a 3-year deal, and that's according to the hiring is according to Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, Detroit, an MLB writer. And Al Avila and Chris Ilitch, on paper to us, just want an experienced manager, but they don't realize that either they don't realize that Ron Gardenhire's anti-math. Otherwise, they prove to be anti-math as well. And of course, Chris Ilitch is behind all this, but Al Avila is chipping in on that too because he's the general manager. And yet, this is when Jeff Moss wrote his article, Al Avila is full of shit.
Well, I mean, to break it down pretty succinctly, this hire was pretty much all Chris Ilitch from other reports that were out before they made the hire. That Chris Ilitch wanted a Garden hire, and Avila wanted somebody else. And it just seems to me that all of the quotes that have come out since he's been hired, how he's malleable, how he's able to embrace analytics and learn from those things, well, it just really just smells of fast, it was cheap, and they weren't going to have to worry about anything. It was a safe hire. And regardless of his stance on advanced stats and all the other things that Tigers fans are looking for in a manager, it was a fast, safe, cheap hire. And he's going to be managing a team of basically young players with some veterans sprinkled in. They're not really projected to be any good. And for the Tigers to do this further signifies to me that they're shaping up down the road, maybe not next year, but this just smells like this just setting things up for a sale. And it wasn't the popular choice. It wasn't really the first or second choice that people thought of. I mean, a lot of people had Freddie Gonzalez as their front runner. But all in all, I just, as a Tigers fan, you just look at that and think, well, they've just kind of given up. Because, I mean, they could have gone out and gotten an Alex Cora. They could have gone out and gotten somebody else. But
Manny Acta, for example.
I mean, you can bring up many examples. Manny Acta interviewed with the Mets and seems to be one of the top candidates for that job. And the cycle of professional sports is recycling. They don't work somewhere else. They just keep recycling managers. And they said they wanted experience, which is palatable. I mean, you don't want somebody going into a situation that the Tigers are in and having limited experience, but at the same time, there were candidates that were better served for that, or better suited for that role that had experience. So, really, we can parse it every way we want to, but it was a safe hire, and it is what it is. Tigers are going to be not very good, and regardless of Ron Gardenhire or Manny Acta or Freddie Gonzalez or Alex Cora was the manager, they weren't going to be any good. So for me to get really worked up about it, I don't like it, but it's just kind of one of those moves that again signifies that they don't really care what the conventional wisdom is or what the popular trends are in Major League Baseball. They just do what they want, and this is another example of that where they hire somebody that is probably not suited for that job, but has experience and will be able to handle the players and will just do the job that is asked of him. He'll do what they want him to do because he hasn't been managing for a couple of years now. He was most recently the bench coach in Arizona. So, it's just kind of blah to me. It's just kind of down the road, down the middle. And in the whole scheme of things that the Tigers have been doing the last couple of years, it doesn't surprise me that they went with the choice that everybody else around baseball just kind of shakes their head at. So, Alavila, for all the things he said about bringing a new era and a new way of thinking in the franchise, has done exactly the opposite. Since he's been the GM, as far as hires, it just really, I don't have any other way to say it, but I don't really care because they're not going to be any good, and they're just going to have somebody there that they will do what they want them to.
Well, there you go.
They being Chris Illich and Alavila, so they won't be questioned. They won't be challenged on anything, and it's just that's where they're at. So the state of the team is not optimal. So that's just kind of where they're at.
True. I wanted to get to Jeff Moss's article, Alavila is full of shit. It all started when Dave Dombrowski had a little use for sabermetrics as GM of the Tigers. And Moss posted a screenshot in his article of Dombrowski's quote, "It doesn't bother me what other people do, we just don't agree with it." It's based on the Tigers and Giants in the 2012 World Series at one end of the scale and Moneyball as a concept at the other, which appeared on the San Francisco Giants or whichever team. while the Tigers front office uses statistics as part of the evaluation process, Dombrowski said, it's not going to make the decision for us. For some teams, it does. But, well, clearly, for the Tigers, Dombrowski claims it doesn't because he either doesn't know math, otherwise it's the sabermetrics are too hard for Dombrowski to or Chris or the Illich family to solve or figure out. They can't even figure out algebra, if you know what I mean.
Well, and he goes on to say in the article about how the Red Sox have hired Alex Cora, and Dave Dombrowski going to the Red Sox organization. This is a team that has embraced statistics and expanded their reach in the area. And for Dave Dombrowski to look at the Tigers when looking at his Tigers tenure, and him basically coming out and saying, we don't really look at that stuff, and then him to go to Boston and go completely the other side of the coin, just shows that it's not a Avila thing. It's not a Dave Dombrowski thing. It's a organizational thing, and that's up to the owner, because the owner is the one that sets the tone. And if they're not going to try to make any strides in that department, the first thing to do would be to hire somebody that doesn't believe in it or that doesn't use those things, and that's Ron Gardenhire. So when he talks about making a difference and doing those things and looking at using, I would say, modern methods of basically running a franchise in the Major League Baseball sphere. You look at the World Series, two of the most highly regarded teams in that movement are playing for the World Championship. And the Tigers are basically a mixed bag of younger players and prospects and broken down veterans, with the exception of a couple people. That's just where they're at, and that's what they've done. They won and had success in spite of those nearsighted beliefs, and now they're going full force and really going the opposite way. And they've hired Ron Gardenhire to do that. They don't care about it. So all the quotes that say that he'll embrace the analytics and he's learned a lot about it. That's fodder for the people that have the concerns about where the Tigers franchise stands on advanced statistics. So again, it's an organizational mindset, and they've pretty much made it point blank with this hire that they do not and will not continue to try to make that a focus for them. They will not try to make advanced statistics, analytics, whatever you want to call it. They don't care. And if they're not going to care about that, then they obviously don't really need to care about winning, because the teams that are winning are doing those sort of things.
There you go. That solves the puzzle. Now, the third part I want to get to about this hiring is a tweet from John Morosi about Ron Gardenhire. From a source in an interview, the Tigers were impressed by Gardenhire's openness to sabermetrics, which evolved during his tenure with the Diamondbacks as a bench coach, may I add. Gardenhire, I got an article from the Score mobile app earlier, and it headlined, Gardenhire embraces the old school baseball style, but he is always open to learning. He never stops learning. I'm not really sure if I'm convinced about if Ron Gardenhire is open to sabermetrics or not. What say you on that one?
Excuse me. Well, their expectations are pretty low for the next couple of years. So what would they have to lose by bringing on somebody that may utilize some of those methods? I mean, why not hire a Gabe Kapler or a Manny Acta or a Alex Cora? Why not? I mean, you're not projected to do anything, so this would be the perfect time to bring somebody in and see what you can do with the core that they have. I mean, again, it's just the organization that they don't believe that they need to get into that. It's a reflection on their owner, which is, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. And really, like I said, Al Avila lost the power struggle. He wanted Freddie Gonzalez. Illich wanted Ron Gardenhire. Illich signs the checks, and now they have Ryan Gardenhire. So, if anybody is surprised at this, then you haven't been watching the Tigers for the past 10 to 15 years. That doesn't mean that you have to accept it. That doesn't mean that you have to think it's right. That just means that you shouldn't be surprised by it.
No, it's like you pointed out, it was a safe hire, and it's only for the rebuilding process, and it's almost kind of like hiring a babysitter to try to develop a bunch of kids for all their parents, if you know what I mean.
Right, and that's basically what they've done, is they've hired somebody that is going to be a placeholder. And that's what they wanted, so that's what they got.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all the Ron Gardenhire stuff that our audience needs to know. Now, let's transition from baseball to hockey. Man, oh man, were the Red Wings exposed this past week. They lost 3-2 to the Tampa Bay Lightning in a game where they had their first penalty shot ever at Little Caesars Arena, and Justin Abdelkader scored on that penalty shot. But Jonathan Ericsson, with a turnover, Lightning scored the go-ahead goal in the third period, early in the third period, and it ended up costing the Wings a 3-2 regulation loss. And then they go to Toronto and then get bombed by the Maple Leafs 6-3. Pretty bad goaltending, bad defense, whatnot. The Red Wings get a power play goal from Tomas Tatar to take a 3-2 lead, or Tatar got 2 goals, but they still relinquished that 3-2 lead with 1:01 to go. And then Alexander Ovechkin takes advantage of Jonathan Ericsson dozing off, opening that lane for Alex Ovechkin. And Alex Ovechkin rifles a one-timer right past Peter Mrazek for the game winner, and passes Jaromir Jagr for all-time overtime goals in a single career, while the Red Wings defense, especially Jonathan Ericsson, just skates around on their job, and then they let the Vancouver Canucks jail sex them 4-1. Way too many turnovers in the second period. Mike Green losing the puck like not once but twice. The second time, he just shoveled that puck away to Daniel Sedin, and the Canucks take advantage of a 2-on-1.
Well, I mean, we talked about how this week we were going to find out what the Red Wings were really made of, and we kind of found out what they were. And see them play 3 top-flight teams in the Eastern Conference, they being Tampa Bay, Toronto, and Washington. And I really thought that they would have a better effort against the Canucks tonight. They didn't. The Canucks kind of in the same boat as the Red Wings as far as trying to rebuild their franchise as well. I thought they probably would be playing a little bit better than they did today. But that said, we kind of knew this was something that could happen. And 4 games in the week, and they get 1 out of the possible 8 points. So they sit at 4-4-1, and we'll talk about the trades here a little bit later. But it really, they're beating the teams that they should have beat, and they're losing the teams that they should lose to. This is going to be kind of where the Red Wings pattern takes them. They're still not a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. They beat some teams early that gives some people some false hope, and then they just got steamrolled this week by good teams. And that's what happens when you're not good, is you lose to good teams. And you can talk about the margin of victory by Tampa Bay and Washington only being 1 goal, but especially the game against Toronto, they didn't get great goaltending. That was something that they didn't probably expect with the way that the goaltenders have been playing, but still, Toronto obviously more talented than Detroit, and overall, this is how the Red Wings season is going to go. They are going to hover around the bottom of the standings because they're not going to beat those teams on a consistent basis, and they are kind of what we thought they were. They're a middling team that is right now grasping at straws to try to keep themselves in the playoff race for as long as possible to keep people's interest up and hopefully sell some seats at the new Little Caesars Arena.
Mm-hmm. And they traded Riley Sheahan and a 2018 fifth-round pick, a draft pick, to the Pittsburgh Penguins for forward Scott Wilson, which I've never heard of, and a 2018 third-round draft pick right before, the day before they lose to the Vancouver Canucks 4-1. It was a move that had to. It was a move that had to happen just to make room for Andreas Athanasiou, who agreed with the Red Wings to terms on a 1-year, $1.387 million deal.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that has been in the works for a while. Riley Sheahan was rumored to be on the trade block for, I would say, probably the balance of the preseason, and Pittsburgh was the team that was asking about him. And I think that this is a move that Ken Holland knew he was going to have to make. And I think he was holding off simply because he hadn't signed Andreas Athanasiou. I think if they had come to terms in preseason, Riley Sheahan would have gone to Pittsburgh at that time. He didn't. So now that he has agreed to a deal, they need to make room for him. And trading Riley Sheahan was the easiest thing they could do from a roster standpoint because Pittsburgh had interest in the past, and they were still interested. And with the way that Pittsburgh is playing, they feel like a little shakeup could help them. So they made a minor move in their scope, and they traded away a guy who played for them and was a playoff lineup. It was in the playoff lineup for them last year. So, he's contributed on a Stanley Cup winning team. That said, he was not a big piece of the puzzle, and he was very easily tradable. And I think the biggest thing for the Red Wings is they improved their draft status. They traded a 5th round and got a 3rd round back instead. So, that's kind of all that really needed to happen so that they could make some room for Andreas Athanasiou under the cap. There may be another move that they need to make. David Booth may get waived so that they can get some more room under the cap. That's something that remains to be seen, but this was not something that really surprised people people that watched this situation closely because they knew that once Anthony had agreed to some sort of deal, whether it be 1 year or 2 years, they were going to have to move somebody or at least get some salary cap relief and able to fit. And really, the only person in the equation, excuse me, that made sense was Sheahan because another team was willing to take him and had been willing to take him for a long time.
Yeah, may I make a correction on Athanasiou's deal? It's $1.3875 million. Pretty close, but that's Athanasiou is back with the Red Wings. Not going to Russia, not going to Switzerland, not going to sign a contract with either country overseas. He's back. So the Red Wings are at the Buffalo Sabres Tuesday at 7:30 on NBCSN. Then they go to Tampa Bay. They're on Thursday at 7:30, and then at the Florida Panthers at BB&T Center in Sunrise Saturday at 7.
Yeah, they're going to do their Florida swing here shortly. Playing more teams, Tampa Bay and Florida, that are probably more talented than they. They also have Buffalo coming up on Tuesday. And so they've got a little mini road trip going on here. First to Buffalo, then down to Florida. And Buffalo struggling a little bit early, but that should be a game that they should compete in. And they go play at Tampa Bay and at Florida. So I would expect much of the same. Looking at Florida this year, they're kind of in that same boat as Red Wings, where they're just kind of floating around the bottom of the pile. So we kind of found out this week what the Detroit Red Wings were really, made of or not made of, and they're just going to have to rely on the schedule for those ebbs and flows in the points standings. And I think this week, looking at the next 4 games, heading into next week, and they have a home date against Arizona next week, Tuesday, on Halloween. Again, you look at this standings and see how those teams are doing. The best they can expect right now is a 2-2 split, but maybe they'll surprise us and win a game in Florida, or maybe even surprise a lot of people and win the game at Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm. So that's the Red Wings' upcoming schedule. Now we transition from hockey to basketball.
Left sideline, 3, and he answers.
The Pistons won their season opener at Little Caesars Arena 102-90 over the Charlotte Hornets. Tobias Harris, 27 points, 11 of 18 shooting, and 10 rebounds. The real focus is on Andre Drummond mostly. 8 points on 3 of 9 shooting. 2 for 2 from the line, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks. This is still a game. Even if they won, the Pistons still could have used Boban Marjanovic for even more offense because their number one center, Andre Drummond, despite being perfect at the free throw line, didn't contribute much offense except he picked up 11 rebounds, which is not terrible, but 8 points, that's unacceptable. Drummond's got to be better than that. And then they lose 115-111 at Verizon Center to the Washington Wizards. Andre Drummond, 9 of 12, 1 for 1 from the free throw line. Boban Marjanovic was on the inactive list. And then Andre Drummond finally got into double digits as the Pistons edged the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden 111-107. Drummond with 21 points and 12 rebounds. Forget it. 11 rebounds or something, 13, somewhere around there. Boban Marjanovic finally played just a small amount of time, 4 minutes, 32 seconds, got only 2 points, 1 steal though, which is a small sample size, but Andre Drummond turning the ball over 5 times which is another thing that Andre Drummond has to work on limiting. But back to the Charlotte game, Drummond, right before the game, during the national anthem, according to Jordan Strack on Twitter, at Jordan Strack, Drummond was keeping his hood on during the national anthem, which was something that even our current president, Donald Trump, had to be dragged into just to get attention, or probably that's what at least somebody else said on Twitter. But this is example number one of Andre Drummond being a rude piece of shit, and then Andre Drummond, example number two, getting into two heated arguments with two Charlotte Hornet players on the court during the game, and he just keeps jawing his mouth on and off, blah blah blah, jaw, spitting fire like a dragon. Andre Drummond showing a lot of displeasure and disrespect towards opposing players. That's just another example of why Drummond still can't grow the fuck up.
Well, right, and for him, what it also does, it takes focus away from, and again, small sample size, but Tobias Harris really playing some good basketball. The leading scorer in 2 of their 3 games so far, and that's what we should be talking about, not Andre Drummond's childishness, whether it be on the court or off the court. And again, it shows why he's not a leader. It shows why he just will continue to drain the Pistons franchise by making those types of decisions. And regardless of how the season plays out, I really don't see it changing. I really don't see it.
Here's why it's not changing. Half of that is on Andre Drummond of acting like a child himself. The other half is the Pistons franchise, including the team president and the head coach Stan Van Gundy and the general manager Jeff Bauer included too, keep using Andre Drummond because he's the face of the franchise, the center of the franchise, and he keeps acting like a child. And the first 2 games, he didn't contribute much offense to the Pistons' first 2 games. They went 1-1 as a result until last Saturday night when he cashed in with 21 points and a double-double. He went 3 for 3 from the free throw line. He stayed perfect at the free throw line. He's now 6 for 6 on the season from the charity stripe. And we actually know why, so it's not actually not much of a surprise because, again, his sinuses were cured, but he had trouble with his free throw shooting because of his sinus problems. They were cured in Africa. That's what we heard on the news. We're not trying to push it any further. That's just the truth. And Drummond somehow has been perfect in the regular season thus far after finishing 16 of 20 from the charity stripe in the preseason this year.
Right, and again, the focus is not on what he's doing because of all the other things that are going on with him, and this is his 6th season. And to think that he's going to change, or he's going to mature, or that he's going to do what people want him to do, I mean, it's the 6th year. It's not changing. And to your point, I mean, Stan Van Gundy could have very easily inserted Boban Marjanovic, who he's stressed in the end of the season not really last year, in the spring, that he was going to use Marjanovic more, and so far he has not done so. It just shows again that they're trying to push this narrative that Andre Drummond is the face of the franchise, and he's not going to be. You just can't make somebody. You can't just keep putting people out there that don't want their role. You have to step up and you have to want that. And Andre Drummond doesn't. He just hasn't given to him. And it's just like anything else. If you keep giving somebody something, they're not going to tell you no. So he's going to continue to be the childish, overgrown baby that he is. And until Stan Van Gundy stops catering to him, you're not going to see any change. And again, the focus is not on how they're playing right now because they're 2-1. Tobias Harris is playing good basketball. Andre Drummond miraculously has not missed a free throw yet this season. But again, we're not focusing on that. We're focusing on all these other things. And that's the kind of stuff that kills teams. It may not happen right away, but it happens over time, and a lot of the players on that team have to be frustrated with the type of coverage that it's receiving because it's not going to change, and it's the same thing that's happened year after year after year. And again, it goes back to if you're not going to change, your franchise's attitude, then there's no motivation for the player to change. And Andre Drummond has not received that motivation, and it doesn't look like he's going to anytime soon.
You are pathetic! Your Honor, dirtbag! You are an absolute disgrace!
No. It's something where like almost that this whole franchise needs to change this whole thing.
We need to change the mindset.
Sometime down the road, and when Drummond's contract expires, hopefully it'll be all over with. Then other centers will have a shot to prove that they're a better player and better person than Andre Drummond has been, not only as a player but a person as well. He got sued for a car accident injury, like we discussed, like Ed Smith and I discussed too. He just played with his phone while driving on the road, and he just turned on the afterburners and T-boned that poor lady, and the poor lady looks the poor lady's life was entirely ruined. Oh man, I feel heavily, deeply, terribly sorry. I still do, and I feel so aggravated at what Andre Drummond did to her. They and the Pistons franchise continues to hang on to that scumbag crybaby coward.
You're just a crybaby, a coward.
Where is your honor, dirtbag? You are an absolute.
As I mentioned before, he's not going to change unless they do something about it, and they haven't done so to this date. And unless something drastically changes, I mean, really, what would need to happen is either A, Stan Van Gundy ceases to be the coach of the Detroit Pistons, or B, somebody, either Tom Gores or Jeff Bauer, gets tired of it and moves on, whether that be through a trade or a buyout or something else. That's the only way that this is going to get fixed. And I don't see either of those scenarios happening soon, so it's just going to be kind of like the Tiger situation. It's just going to keep going. And even though the solutions are in front of them, there are things that are going to happen because they would rather just go with the status quo, and hopefully, they just feel that they can navigate through those instead of trying to fix the problem, just trying to work around it.
Mm-hmm. So the Pistons, their upcoming schedule looks like this. They're home against the winless Philadelphia 76ers Monday at 7:30. Monday at 7 on Fox Sports Detroit at Little Caesars Arena. As far as I'm concerned, the Sixers are still winless. Then on Wednesday at 7, in the same premise, they host a pretty good Minnesota Timberwolves team. I don't know what their record is, but after that, they hit the West Coast. The LA Clippers Saturday at 10:30, at the Golden State Warriors, the defending NBA champs, Sunday at 8:30, and then the Los Angeles Lakers a week from Tuesday at 10:30. Just a three-game West Coast swing, California swing. That would be. All three teams that they're playing are in California, the state of California. But the Philadelphia 76ers, to start off with, the Pistons should have no problem beating, no matter who they play, unless they continue to at least make it interesting. And especially when they hang on to Andre Drummond and not play Boban Marjanovic much, or at all for that matter. Buck, are you there?
Yep, sorry about that. I'm trying to do too many things at once, and it was on mute. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna again with the same thing with the Red Wings. You're gonna find out what the Pistons are made of going into that California swing. They do play the Minnesota Timberwolves to start off that swing, going to the West Coast, and the Timberwolves right now. If you look at the standings, they're at the same spot the Detroit Pistons are at. They're 2-1, and it should be a competitive game with that team. And then they go out to meet the Clippers and Golden State, and we're going to find out what type of team the Pistons have, because they're going to be playing some of the premier teams in the league, in the Western Conference anyway. And again, you find out what your team's made of by playing teams that are as good or better than you. And I think this road trip will definitely give us some insight as to where the Pistons are and where they need to go.
Mm-hmm. When they hit the California swing, let their exposure begin as well. So that's Pistons. Now we transition to Lions.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Football. They had their bye week. They're home against the Pittsburgh Steelers Sunday at 8:30 on NBC, which doesn't leave us much time or any time at all for next week's installment of episode 288 of the Week in Review on Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio. Might have to pick a different day on that time, which will be announced later. But let's preview the Steelers and Lions here on ESPN.com. The Lions are going to have to play without Golden Tate. He's out for a few weeks. He's got an AC joint sprain in his shoulder, and Golden Tate's has had a pretty bad year, to say the least. But taking a look at the summary, the Steelers are 5-2. The Lions are 3-3.
Well, I mean, today the Steelers were able to grind out a win against the Cincinnati Bengals. It was back and forth during the first half, but they began to pull away and really shut the Bengals down, didn't let them score in the second half, and were able to add to their lead via the field goal route and ended up winning that game 29-14. But you look at these two teams. I mean, Pittsburgh right now playing some of their better football after really an uneven, rocky start. And defensively, they've really shown through, beating up on both the Chiefs and the Bengals in recent weeks and holding them to low point totals. And if you're the Lions, when you're missing a guy like Golden Tate, who, as you said, hasn't had a great year, but that's another weapon that you can use. It's just going to put more focus on some of the other guys. And you're really going to hope that they can step up if you're a Lions fan. But the reality is that if the Pittsburgh Steelers play defense like they have the last 2 weeks, it's going to be very tough for the Lions to win that football game, regardless if it's at home or not.
Right.
And Matt Stafford, even though he's got the bye week to rest up, still probably isn't going to be 100%. And you're going to hope, if you're a Lions fan, that he's able to come back and after getting some rest, at least improve on his last couple performances. And, that said, the Steelers, I would think that if you were going to look at this game preview, they should win this football game, and it's really just going to depend on what that score is going to be. Is it going to be close because the Lions are playing at home? Or is it going to be another 2-score game or more because the Steelers defensively are able to lock down on the Lions, who are going to be out, or minus a couple of weapons. Golden Tate's going to be out, and other guys are a little bit banged up. So offensive line still some issues. We don't know exactly what the offensive line is going to look like on Sunday night. So, and the Steelers were able to get out of this game with minimal injuries. So, I really don't see a rosy outlook for the Lions, but it is the National Football League. Things change from week to week, day to day. So, that said, looking at it from this perspective, the Lions really getting into the teeth of their schedule now, and they're going to have their work cut out for them. We mentioned it last week. The division is really theirs for the taking. You have the Bears today, that's my team. They won a game today against Carolina, and they only completed 4 passes. 4. I mean, that's almost unheard of, especially in today's NFL. 4 passes. They completed 4. But their defense scored 2 touchdowns, held Carolina to a minimal offensive performance, only getting 3 points. So, the division is theirs for the Lions if they want it. Brett Hundley came in and stunk up the joint today at Green Bay. And so it's there for them because we've seen that they've been able to beat the Vikings, and the Vikings aren't really that good. But boy, it's not going to be easy, but the path is there for them. And I don't think it's going to start next week, though, because the Steelers right now are just playing fantastic football, especially on the defensive side. And without Golden Tate, offensive lines in flux still with injuries, it's going to be a tough battle for the Lions to try to win that game.
Yeah, and the offensive lineman T.J. Lang is questionable, for example. But
you don't want to go into a game where the team coming in is really getting after the quarterback and really shutting down opposing offense. I mean, they shut down the Chiefs last week, who at the time were just running over everybody, and they went into Arrowhead Stadium and locked them down, especially in the second half. And the same thing could apply here, where as long as they can stay close in the first half, keep a lead, they're going to get into that second half and really turn screws on the opposing offense. And if that pattern holds true again, the Lions are going to be up a real tough hill to climb.
I'm going to predict the Steelers to win by at least 20 points, maybe like a 24-point margin. I'm going to pick 35. I'm going to say 35-14 would be the score. 38 to 14 rather. Steelers. That's 24 points. The Steelers are going to expose the Lions' defense. Ben Roethlisberger, he's still no joke. There's a reason why they call him Big Ben. He's won at least one Super Bowl ring against the Arizona Cardinals back in 2009. And
he got 2 total. He won
they
got
Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown too.
That was another thing. People were thinking that Big Ben was done. They didn't think he was effective anymore. and then they came out in the next two games and blew two teams away. Now, a lot of that is running the football. Le'Veon Bell had 134 yards on the ground, and Ben Roethlisberger didn't have a great day for running the football today. He was only 14 of 24, but 224, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And when you can run the ball effectively and not have to pass the ball downfield and force things, it's really tough to beat those teams. And that's what they did today. They just ran the football, stayed with a steady rushing attack, and passed when they needed to, and took what the Bengals were giving them. They didn't blow the lights out of the scoreboard, but it's kind of hard to score without the ball. And when you run the ball over 40 times and get over 150 yards on the ground, especially in the NFL, it's going to be tough for that other team to win. And we see it time and time again, and I talk about it all the time. You don't have to run the football that much to be successful, but you do have to be able to do it a little bit. And that's one of the things that the Lions still have not been able to do, is run the football. They instead rely on a lot of short passes and other methods to try to move the ball in short chunks down the field. But with the way that Stafford has been hit this year, the way the offensive line has been going through injuries and really just trying to patch up some holes in that offensive line, it's going to be tough. And my prediction for the game is, I don't know if they'll win by that much of a margin, just because of the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense are not an explosive offense anymore. They still do have some deep threats, but they're just not built in that way. That said, they manage the game really well. And if they can stay away from turnovers, excuse me, like they did today, they're going to make it tough. So my prediction is going to be Pittsburgh 27 and the Lions 14.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't see the Lions being able to score on this Pittsburgh Steelers defense with any regularity or any consistency.
I'm going to change my prediction and say the Lions come up with 10 points and the Steelers still come up with 27. So 27-10 would be my new prediction. So
either way, the prediction is that the Lions aren't going to have much success.
No, not at all. Not much whatsoever. So we transition from pro to college football.
Touchdown, Michigan! You are pathetic!
Man, the Michigan Wolverines got blown out after making the first half interesting before the Nittany Lions would get a touchdown at the end of the first half. 21-13 was the score at halftime. The Nittany Lions, my oh my, they sure as hell pulled away. 42-13. The number 2 ranked team in the nation at Happy Valley. There was no guarantee the Michigan Wolverines are going to upset the Penn State Nittany Lions. It was definitely not going to happen. Even if the game ended up close, it was not going to end up close anyway, because Michigan's defense, as we projected in our heads, was going to get exposed by a real extremely powerful Penn State Nittany Lions offense, and it sure as hell happened.
Well, not only did it get exposed, but it really showed that, number one, the offense for Michigan was sparse and was ineffective for most of the game. The other side of that coin is that Penn State did their homework, and they picked on a lot of different things. I mean, Trace McSorley had 282 yards passing. I don't know if that's his top number of the year, but it's got to be damn close. And Deshaun Hamilton just tore him up in the slot, and they just didn't have an answer for it. And I know that Saquon Barkley had over 100 yards rushing, but he was not the focus. It was more Trace McSorley to Deshaun Hamilton that was really the key for Penn State. And when your offense continues to churn out 3 and outs like it's their job, it becomes difficult for the defense to adjust and really keep pace. And when you're playing a team such as Penn State at their place, the one thing that Michigan could lean on, they thought would be their defense, and instead it really failed them spectacularly. And they're gonna play Rutgers this weekend. They're gonna beat Rutgers.
Oh yeah, Rutgers is terrible.
I mean, that's not really a debate. But the thing is, it goes back to when you're playing those teams that are better than you. And right now, Penn State is better than Michigan. Michigan State is better than Michigan. Ohio State is better than Michigan. Could be said that Wisconsin is better than Michigan right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're looking at least 2 more. You're staring 2 more losses in the face, and
at least 2 more. Michigan's out of the top 25 in the AP poll rankings. Yeah, did you know that?
That translates to 8-4, and
that's not a top 25 record if you ask me.
No, and they don't. I'm not going to say they deserve to be in the top 25 because they only have 1 bad loss. But when you look at how they lost to Penn State, the other teams that they're playing are ranked just as high or higher in a lot of those categories that Penn State is, and they can't move the football. And I've said it again, and I'll just keep saying it. If your offense can't keep your defense off the field, I'm not asking you to score 40 points a game. I'm just asking you to keep them off the field and put the other team in bad field position. You can win games with your defense. It's not unheard of. It happens all the time. But your offense, I mean, John O'Corn isn't getting it done. They couldn't run the ball because Penn State knew that they didn't want to try to throw the ball over the yard. And, they just were completely shut down by Penn State. And I think that for Michigan to improve, I just don't see it happening. Their problems are getting bigger, not smaller. And as you're going through the season, that's not something that you want to have happen. So, like I said, they'll go to Rutgers. They host Rutgers. They'll beat Rutgers, but then again, it's a coin flip. They have Minnesota coming in, who has struggled a little bit more than I thought they would have. But that'll be a game that Michigan will need to really work hard at. And then if you got Wisconsin and Ohio State left on the schedule, I mean, those games just don't seem winnable right now for Michigan. And if you want to be in the top 25, you got to beat teams that are above you. And right now, Michigan's not doing that.
And to beat those teams, you have to be way better than you played against the Penn State Nittany Lions. Even if you're going to come up with a loss, you better come up with a much better effort than that. And Michigan didn't do that.
I would have been more confident had they lost 21-14 or 28-14. But that second half was really just a collapse.
And I expected that too.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch that game, I mean, it was coming. You just didn't know when, but it was coming. And Penn State just right now is playing a good level of football. But Michigan they just got nothing going for them. And defensively, they have some things to fix. They'll get those fixed against an inferior opponent. But when you're playing a team like Ohio State or Wisconsin, you cannot give up yardage like that and expect to win.
No. So Michigan does host Rutgers, and we'll get to that matchup in the college football and the Mitten quick picks after we cover those other teams here. First of all, the Michigan State Spartans.
Touchdown, MSU!
The Spartans fell behind 9-3 in the third quarter and early in the fourth quarter, too. But they scored 2 quick touchdowns, one by Felton Davis, I believe, and then the other by L.J. Scott, who was arrested for driving with a suspended driver's license for the 7th time in his life.
Are you kidding me with this? You are pathetic!
And they still let him play. despite that, because they thought they might need him against Indiana, because L.J. Scott, even though he has fumbled the ball like almost 10 times total this season, but 3 of them against Bowling Green for the most part. L.J. Scott, well, I don't know. Maybe he's not as good as we thought he was, but still, he's not terrible. He's just got to hang on to the football.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't fumble, he's actually a pretty decent back. But when you're putting the ball on the ground with the regularity that he and the other Michigan State running backs are, it makes it really tough on your team. Brian Lewerke didn't have a great day. Was really poor overall for his level of play. So that didn't help either. They really just kind of muddled along against Indiana, and finally, like you said, in the fourth quarter, finally came to life and were able to pull that game out. But Indiana was up for most of the second half, and that's not something that spells success. They won the game, but Michigan State did not play its best game, obviously. But Indiana has their own problems, and Michigan State was finally able to take advantage of that.
In the end.
But that was just not a good game for them. And
not a good game for either team.
That's the type of game you need to be winning at home, especially at home.
Yeah.
It's one thing to struggle on the road, like they did against Minnesota in the fourth quarter, because that's on the road. It's a different atmosphere. But you got a homecoming game against Indiana. You've got to beat them handily and really get out in front, and they just weren't able to do that. It wasn't a great game for Michigan State. They haven't had really great performances in the last 3 games. I mean, they beat Michigan by 4 points. They beat Minnesota by 3, and they beat Indiana by 8. I think that Michigan State's probably a solid third in this division right now. I don't see them beating Ohio State or Penn State, but right now they're 6-1, and I think that's kind of a mirage, because I don't think they're a 6-1 team talent-wise, but the schedule has been kind to them, and they've gotten some teams when they've been on the wrong end of where they need to be. They got Michigan in a bad spot, and Michigan's had their own struggles, and no way am I trying to say that Michigan deserved to win that football game, but Michigan State took advantage, and they did what they had to do. They went to Minnesota, dominated for 3 quarters, and then took the fourth quarter off, and were able to get out with a win. And then against Indiana at home, no less, really struggled mightily against an Indiana defense where, Indiana still gave up 27 points to Michigan, who's not a good offensive team. And they could only manage 17, and 14 of that came in the last 6 minutes of the game. That's just a bad performance. And Michigan State fans will tell you that, at least the ones that have some grasp on reality, that 6-1 record right now, it looks great. But the way that they played the last 3 weeks, that's going to be tough. If you're going to play Penn State and you're playing Ohio State, and you play that way, it's going to be a long afternoon for you.
Yeah, just this is like it's almost the big dump 10, except you got the Penn State Nittany Lions and the Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2 top teams. Also, Wisconsin rounding out the top 3 Big Ten teams, but the rest of the Big Ten is like the big dump 10.
Oh, it's a dumpster fire. Really, outside of those 3 teams, there's not a whole lot. It's just kind of a mass of mediocrity. They'll go to Northwestern, the Spartans this weekend. They'll play Northwestern at Northwestern. And I think that if you look at Michigan State, how they've performed at home, they got blown out by Notre Dame at home.
Oh, yeah.
And
Notre Dame's a good team.
No, they most certainly are. And that's what that makes that 6-1 look a lot better, is their only loss is to a team that right now is rolling in South Bend and absolutely steamrolled UFC. But, the two teams that you really thought that they would be able to beat and beat handily at home, they struggled against Western even. And were able to pull that game out. So it's kind of a mirage. They're doing the things that they need to do to win the football games, but they are not a premier team in the Big Ten right now. And I know a lot of people thought that when Desmond Howard talked about them being a spoiler, it really set some Michigan State fans off. But if you look at the context of what he's trying to tell you, it's true. They're not a division-winning football team. And they are going to have a hard time when they play their next couple games here. After they play Northwestern, they've got Penn State and Ohio State back-to-back. They're going to find out real quick what type of team they have. They have Penn State at home, and the way they've played at home right now has been pretty underwhelming, so that's kind of a danger zone. And then they go to Columbus to play Ohio State, and the way that Ohio State's playing right now versus the way that Michigan State's playing right now, if those two things don't change dramatically, it's going to be a long day or night in Columbus for the Spartans.
Oh, yeah. The Spartans, by the way, have now moved up to 16th in the AP poll.
Oh, man.
While the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, by the way, have now moved up to number 9. Yeah, they sure as hell deserve to be in the top 10, the Irish.
Well, and I think that when you look at a team like Notre Dame, who has the same record as Michigan State, and why Michigan State is ranked where they're at, that's why. Because Notre Dame is doing things to teams that Michigan State just isn't doing right now. Notre Dame lost by 1 point at home to what is proving to be a very good Georgia team, and they went to Michigan State and blew out previously undefeated Spartans, and also beat. They've beaten some teams, and they've got some teams ahead on the schedule. Miami, one of those. We're going to find out what type of team Notre Dame has as well. So, college football, even though you want to parse every week and every play down to the finest point, it really just matters over the course of the season what you do. And right now, Notre Dame deserves to be there. And Michigan State, even though they are 6-1 in the Big Ten, they don't deserve to be there. I mean, there's a lot of teams ahead of them at 6-1 that are just, frankly, better football teams.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Then we go to the mediocre American Conference. The Western Michigan Broncos just edged the Eastern Michigan Eagles 20-17 in overtime in Ypsilanti. Paul Fricano missing a 24-yard field goal chip shot attempt to seal it for the Western Michigan Broncos, who only needed a field goal to win, perhaps. It turned out. It was a low-scoring game. Not too many turnovers. Just the defense doing its job, and the Broncos come up with yet another victory, a close one that is, against the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean they struggled. Did Western Michigan against a really good defense in Eastern Michigan, but at 2-5, there's a reason that Eastern is at that point, and that's offensively they just were not effective. Brogan Roback was 28 of 44 for 308 yards. So in between the 20s, they moved the ball fine. But again, when you get into that red zone, that separates the men from the boys. And Eastern Michigan just was not able to cash in on their opportunities. And as you mentioned, they missed a real easy chip shot field goal. Excuse me. And Western was able to come away with the win. And it's a good win for Western. They needed that one after losing last week, so they still stay alive in the MAC race.
True. And then the Central Michigan Chippewas.
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
Are you kidding me? They blew out the Ball State Cardinals 56-9. The Ball State Cardinals proved to be a terrible team, like I pointed out last week. And the Central Michigan Chippewas offense coming up with 56 points. Man, they just found a massive hole in the Ball State Cardinals team on both sides of the ball, and they didn't waste any time taking advantage. But it's no wonder why CMU just got just like an easy gift. While on the road, they won the last two on the road. They upset the Ohio Bobcats 2 weeks before that, and then here in Muncie, just last Saturday, they blew out the Cardinals of Ball State, who are again a very bad team, but to blow them out by that score, 56-9.
Oh, man!
That's still a little bit unheard of. The Chippewas are not that good. They're still a mediocre team. They're now 4-4 overall, 2-2 in the MAC. They're horrible at home, yet they keep finding ways to win on the road. It's blowing my mind. It's twisting it.
Yeah, well, in their next game against Western on Wednesday the 1st, the day after Halloween, is at Waldo Stadium. So the stars are aligning a little bit for them right now to perhaps pull off the upset, because they play at home. They stink at home. I mean, just not good. I mean, they barely got past Rhode Island at home in their home opener, and they haven't won a game at Mount Pleasant since. So maybe it's better for them to go on the road, because their best performances so far has come away from Mount Pleasant.
Yeah. And Chippewa fans thought that John Bonamigo was going to be their new savior. Wrong. I mean, get the hell out of here.
Well, I mean, Central's a tough place to win, and everybody knows it. And, I mean, Brian Kelly, for his short stint, was able to do some things there, but over the long haul, Central is it's a tough place to win. And John Bonamigo, I think, what his charge is to keep them competitive, get guys to graduate, and maybe send one or two guys off to the pros. I mean, that's kind of where you're at with that program, and that's kind of what Central's always been, for the most part, is a mediocre team. It's Division I football, so it gives some guys an opportunity to showcase themselves, as there's a lot of Central Michigan grads in the NFL right now. And when I say a lot, I mean proportionally to all the other schools. But, boy, it's just a tough place to win. It's not a great venue. They don't have a lot of support. Nobody shows up to the games. And they play in a conference that really, there's a couple of teams at the head of the class, and then it's everybody else. And, they're that Jekyll and Hyde team. They're going to be a 6-6, 7-5 team that maybe skates into a bowl, and that's kind of what they expected. So, as far as John Bonamigo being the savior, I don't know if I would ever have bought into that, but you would hope that they somehow can get a home win. Their last two home games are against Eastern and Northern Illinois, and Northern Illinois, one of the better teams in the MAC, so you really hope that you can beat Eastern at home, because otherwise, I mean, to go winless at home, to win one game at home, you're not doing well. So, Central's just kind of, they're just kind of there, and that's where they're at right now.
Mm-hmm. So that leads us to the college football and the Mitten quick pick. Central and Western have the bye week. Both of them do, which is weird. But then they face each other thereafter at Waldo Stadium, like you pointed out. But for the other three teams, we'll start with the Michigan State Spartans at the Northwestern Wildcats, 3:30 on ABC. Buck, I'll let you go first.
Well, it's a road game, so we talked about that home-road schism. Spartans have much better performances on the road. Northwestern is struggling. They barely beat Iowa at home last week in overtime. And Iowa not a great football team either. Excuse me. So if you look at how they play, I think this will be a close game just because of the way that Michigan State has played over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to go with Michigan State 23 and Northwestern 14.
All right. The last time the Spartans were on the road, they scored 30 points. They played the first 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter, their defense took their both units took their foot off the accelerator and let Minnesota score 21 almost unanswered points, and the Spartans held on by just 3 points. If they play like all 60 minutes, especially the fourth quarter, then they'll at least get a somewhat much comfortable win, if not a rout. But we'll see what happens. I'm gonna go with both confidence and a gut feeling of doubt combined, mixed together. I'm gonna go with the Spartans 27 and the Wildcats 17. Then you got
sounds reasonable.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Then you got the Michigan Wolverines at the Big House at noon on BTN, hosting the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Last I saw the Rutgers Scarlet Knights record, let me take a look at this before I make my prediction. Rutgers' records are almost 500. Can you believe that?
Well, they're riding a hefty 2-game winning streak. This tells you how bad Rutgers football is. This is the first time that they've won back-to-back conference games since they've been in the Big Ten. They beat a terrible Illinois team in Champaign, and they were able to squeak out a win against Purdue last week or yesterday. So
at home?
Yeah, at home. So they were able to squeak that one out, and they're riding a 2-game winning streak in the Big Ten. And they're going to head to Ann Arbor, and I think that Michigan's going to be a frustrated team, and I think that coupled with the fact that Rutgers still isn't really that good, just because Michigan's offense isn't that great, I don't see them really blowing them out in the traditional sense, but I think that Rutgers' offense isn't very good, so you look at that, and I think that I'm going to go with a prediction: Michigan 28 and Rutgers 3.
Uh-huh. Well, I see Michigan winning too. The way the offense has struggled, they return home. Michigan's offense especially is going to get a boost, and especially their defense. They just have to glue it all back together, and I'm pretty sure they will against an easy Rutgers team. I'm gonna go Michigan 31, Rutgers 6.
Sounds about right.
Yep. Then you got the Eastern Michigan Eagles at the Northern Illinois Huskies Thursday at 7 on CBS Sports Network. The Northern Illinois Huskies are no joke. Even though it's the mediocre American Conference, the Huskies, you can't mess around with them. Eastern Michigan is really going to have to step it up, especially their defense. On defense, because in DeKalb, it's a tough place to play, and the Huskies take easy advantage of that, no matter who they play in the MAC schedule.
Well, you look at the short turnaround; it's always tough. You see it all the time in the NFL. The short turnaround of a Thursday night game, and this is really no different. You have a short turnaround time. Limited time to get everybody on the same page. So with that coupled with Eastern Michigan's defense and how they have performed over the balance of the season. I think this will be closer than what a lot of people expect. I still think Northern Illinois will win. I don't think it'll be decided until late. I'm going to go with Northern Illinois winning this game 24, and Eastern Michigan 13.
What was your prediction? And I was typing up a tweet.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's NIU 24, Eastern Michigan 13.
That's fair. I think that's fair enough. Paul Fricano keeps missing critical field goals or extra points, whichever it may be. I'm going to go with Northern Illinois 27 and Eastern Michigan 10. Their defense might struggle a little bit against the Huskies, whereas their offense is really not going to continue to not produce much.
Yeah,
like they have all season.
Yeah, those short turnaround games, they can end up one of two ways. It can either be a really close battle with teams not getting on track until late, or sometimes it can just blow up and be a shootout, but I just don't see that with these two teams. So I think a lower scoring game is going to be in effect.
Mm-hmm. So that's the college football and the Mitten quick picks. Now, let's go to the second segment, which is 5 questions.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth.
Question number 1: can we actually trust Ron Gardenhire's openness to and usage of sabermetrics? I'm going to go with I'm not going to jumpstart this. I have only a gut feeling of doubt. I'm going to say no, because Ron Gardenhire is over the hill. Like we pointed out, he's anti-math. But this is a tweet from John Morosi that's only like a dick tease or whatever you may call it. Or it's just like a punchline or something like that. Almost a punchline, but it's something that may not be true unless Ron Gardenhire somehow proves us otherwise, which may not be likely.
My short answer is no. A tiger doesn't change his stripes, no pun intended, and there's not going to be a real motivation for him to do so. So we've kind of hashed that over with our other discussions. So my point blank answer on that is no. I can't trust him to embrace the advanced analytics of the game, because he hasn't done so anywhere and hasn't been able to prove it to anybody.
Put both sides together, you get a big fat no.
Next question.
Question number 2: is the exposure starting to display on the Red Wings? I'd say yes, because they're still a turnover-prone team, especially with Jonathan Erickson on their team, and now Mike Green's turning the puck over, and Xavier Ouellette against Vancouver. Oh my God!
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think the short answer again here is yes. We kind of predicted this last week, where they were playing some of the better teams. I didn't expect them to play it this way against Vancouver, but the fact still remains that they're not a fundamentally sound hockey team on their own end. And you can only turn the puck over so many times in an NHL game before it gets into the net, and that's what happened tonight. When you're playing better teams, such as they played last week, it's magnified even more, and somehow they're able to stay in those games. But tonight, boy, it was just not good. And those things happen over 82-game schedules. Sometimes you just have bad nights, but overall, we know what this Red Wings team is, and they're kind of back at the position where we thought they would be for the balance of the season, which is hovering around 500 and grasping at straws, trying to stay in that playoff race.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Next question.
Question number 3: do the Michigan Wolverines deserve to be out of the top 25 after getting blown out by the Penn State Nittany Lions? I'd say yes. Their defense just wasn't there in the second half, and it was a blowout win. Like I just mentioned, like we talked about, their offense is terrible, especially with Geno as their quarterback, and he's the only one they've got with Wilton Spate possibly out for the season, and Jim Harbaugh, and then you got this deflecting head coach Jim Harbaugh, just deflecting, and it's going to fall apart for Michigan one day.
Well, those days are coming when they play Wisconsin and Ohio State back to back. So, do they deserve to be in the top 25 right now?
No.
Right now, yes, and simply because they are still 5-2. Yeah, I mean, they're still 5-2, and they still have some games to play, but it doesn't look good. So I would say that even if they are on the outskirts, which right now they're, I think, 25 in the Coaches Bowl, and if they beat Rutgers, which they should, that might improve, but it's just going to be a slow spiral downward. And when they could go into that Wisconsin game at possibly 8-2 with wins over Minnesota, Maryland, and Rutgers, or kind of towards the bottom of that Big Ten. They could head into those two games at 8-2 and be ranked, but they'll be quickly out of the rankings when they lose those two games. So for now, yes. At the end of the season, unless they beat one of those teams, no.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Question number 4. What should the Michigan State Spartans have done with running back L.J. Scott?
Well, this is a little bit tougher. The reason I say that is because it's something that should have been addressed before it got to this point, quite honestly. And when you let things go that long, it's hard to finally pull the trigger on the punishment because you've let it go for so long. As a father, knowing that my kids, if you let them do something 5 times and then the 6th time you tell them they can't do it, they look at you like you're an idiot, because, well, you let us do it the other times, and now we can't. They don't understand that. And LJ Scott still is a young adult. He's learning. You would think that he would figure out he needs to clean up his act as far as getting things squared away so that he doesn't have a driver's license, but it's happened 6 other times before, and this was the 7th time, and nothing has come of it. So I don't think that they did anything wrong because they hadn't done anything to this point. If they really wanted to drive the point home, they would have told him after a couple of times, hey, get your stuff together, and until you can do that, you're not playing. But for him to have this happen 7 times, I don't think it was right before that they let him go without any punishment. But at the same time, I can see why they didn't really punish him other than making him sit out the first series because they haven't done anything before this point. So they shouldn't have done anything different than they did this weekend. So for that, I say it was fine. But again, going back to my first point, why is it getting to this part? Why is it getting to the point where the 7th time it happening and him getting arrested, that's the time that they decided to do something. Why aren't you tackling this problem before? And that's the kind of thing that when I look at that and go, just nip it in the bud. Just say, hey, if you can't get your situation under control, I can't put you on the football field. And if you can't pay your parking tickets or your speeding tickets or whatever the hell it was that caused him to get to this stage, well, maybe you need to take some time off of football, whether it be sitting on the sidelines or whatever that might be. That's the point they needed to step in. But now it's past the point of no return. So no punishment here. It's just in line with everything else they've done. So I didn't really expect them to do anything different. It would have been a pleasant surprise had they suspended him or done something a little bit more harsh, but I can see why they didn't. So I'm not going to try to really hang them on this one because it wasn't something that they addressed before, and now they still really didn't address it, and there's not really much to be said other than if it happens somehow again, which, God, I hope it wouldn't. If it did, then there really would need to be something done because that's just pretty much inexcusable.
Yeah, definitely. You got to have more disciplined players on your roster, whatever the case may be. That's the truth from where I stand on this.
Next question.
Question number 5. How good are the Central Michigan Chippewas on the road as opposed to being horrible at home?
Well, I mean, you look at their road schedule. They went to, in the non-conference portion, they traveled 3 times. They went to Kansas, who's not any good at football, lost to them. They played Syracuse.
Oh, they beat Kansas.
I'm sorry, they beat Kansas, they beat Kansas, who's not any good at football, which is not surprising. But then they go to Syracuse, and even Clemson can't win at Syracuse, so I guess you can excuse them a little bit for that.
Right.
And then they lose to Boston College, who's not a great Big East, but ACC team. But then they go to Ohio, and they win that one, and then they decimate Ball State, who's not a good football team, at their place. And then they come home, and they can barely get past Rhode Island. And they get blitzed in the other 2 games. So, and I said before, Central Michigan is just not a great venue for football. It's not well attended. It's hard to play Division I games in front of 5,000, 6,000 people, and that probably contributes to a lot of it. But it's one of those inexplicable things. They're just not any good at home, and they go on the road, and maybe that's their thing. Maybe they are removed from the distractions and the families and everything else, and they just focus on football. Whereas at home, it's real easy to lose track of what your goal is, and maybe that's the case with this team. So, maybe they should just schedule more games on the road because right now at home, this is not good. It's not a good thing for them.
Good point. So that wraps up our 5-question segment and to our entire audience. If you want to answer those 5 questions, just replay that segment of this episode and answer them the best you can without going out of line. Now for the 3rd and final segment. What's your grade?
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
Two events to grade. First off, the Tigers hiring Ron Gardenhire as their new manager. I'll start with you.
I'm going to go with a D, simply because it wasn't the worst choice they could have made. However, there was a lot of other opportunities for them to choose somebody that would have been more progressive. They didn't. So, in that regard, we're just going to go with a D because they didn't quite fail, but, boy, they didn't do well.
I'm going to go with a D- because Ron Gardenhire, anti-math, Chris Illich, anti-math, and Gardenhire, who used to be a decent manager for the Minnesota Twins, but he never even nearly made it to the World Series as their manager. And then his view for sabermetric as a bench coach for the Arizona Diamondbacks was maybe it was a little bit, as I got word from John Morosi about it, but I don't know how much that's going to mean. Probably not going to be much as of right now. So I can just put that aside for now. Save that for later. I'm going to go with a D-.
All right.
Then you got the other event, the Michigan State Spartans allowing running back L.J. Scott to play against the Indiana Hoosiers last Saturday. Buck, I'll start with you again.
I'm going to go with the C. The reason I say that is because they probably could have done more previously. They didn't. So this punishment kind of lines up with where they're at in the situation, which wasn't much. So by that token, they didn't exceed expectations. They didn't fall below them. So right down the middle, I'll go with a C.
I'm going to go with the same grade. L.J. Scott came up with an insurance touchdown at the end of the fourth quarter, right before the end of the fourth quarter, but he probably didn't get much playing time. He sat out the first half. They had to sit him out the first half due to what happened prior to that game. He got arrested for the 7th time for driving with a suspended license. 7th time in his life, and that's just, which is just unbelievably almost philonic. But we're both going to go with a mid-range C on this one. So that's our What's Your Grade segment. So for our audience, if they have grades for each event, post them in the comment bank below the comment bank in this episode. Please don't go out of line. And that's episode 287 of the weekend review. Buck, Geno, thanks again. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, no problem.
And before we sign off, we want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share it, and have their friends share that as well, because we want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast organization is boosting its posts of each episode from Spreaker on its Facebook page and searching for local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, send our Facebook page a message. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and Buck Geno at BuckGeno3rd. Like and share the Michigan Sports Truth Facebook page and join its Facebook group. We'll talk to you next week on episode 288. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.